Hi guys, I'm Gasha. Welcome to the channel and welcome as always to our coffee times. I'm aware that my mug is a Christmas mug, but we are in the month of April and it just snowed today and I was like, what's happening? So it's totally valid. Anyways, we are here to talk about March, that month that nearly put me into a really bad reading slump because I attempted to read too much and I forced myself a little bit too much. However, we have managed to read in the month of March a total of 13 books, which, you know, some of them were smaller than others, but still it's a lot of books for me in just 1 month. So I'm here to let you know what I thought of them.
It's coffee time!
So in today's video, like I have mentioned, I'm going to be talking to you about all the things that I read in the month of March. I had a pre-established TBR pile and I just decided to dump more books into said TBR pile, and it was a little bit of a disaster, but I read nearly everything that I had planned to, plus a couple of extras. So in the end, you know, if it ends well, everything's well. However, in the first couple of days of April, I have not read much really because I'm trying to leave myself some space now from reading before I really burn myself out. And today we are here to rate our books as always in this channel with coffee mugs. So if you're new here, we like to rate our books with coffee mugs and we always start with the lowest rating to the highest to end up on a positive note. Also, if you're new here, please consider subscribing to the channel. I post mostly book recommendations and book reviews about anything horror and thriller, and also hit the notification bell before you leave so you don't miss any more coffee times. The first one is Teacher's Pet by Richie Tankersley Cusick, and this is a point horror book. This one was a book that it had a really good idea, but when they were trying to develop this idea, I think they tried to achieve too many things in such a short book and it kind of backfired a little bit. We are following Kate here. She loves writing, especially horror, so she decides to join a seminar and she's going to meet one of her favorite authors and she's really excited. However, when she gets there, a lot of strange things start to happen and she has the feeling that somebody's watching her, somebody is after her. So this book also had a really weird kind of romance that I was not there for as well. I think it was not really my cup of tea. I still gave it 3 because it was still enjoyable and bingeable, but definitely not my favorite point horror book. Next, I read Harrow Lake by Kat Ellis. This is a YA horror thriller, and even though it does have some of the tropes of this type of books, I really enjoyed it because it is combined with a movie and a movie set, and you know guys, I love that. In our story, we follow Lola. Her overprotective father has always sheltered her, and now that he, after having an accident, ends up in the hospital, she has no other choice but to be sent to her grandmother's to stay there for a couple of days while her father recovers. However, Harrow Lake is a place she doesn't really remember much from. They left when she was a kid. She also is a stranger to her grandparents, and Harrow Lake is known for being the place where her father made his most famous movie. So every year tourists come there trying to find the places where the movie was shot, etc. And when Lola gets there, she starts to already feel people are really weird, something is wrong with this place, and she's trying to discover things about her past, about her mother, what happened to her, and why they had to leave this place. And the more she uncovers, the more it becomes clear to her that there's a lot of things from her past that her father has kept from her. This was an entertaining, fast-paced read that had a very solid plot, and it was a nice twist at the end. So I definitely recommend it to you guys if you're interested on reading a little bit more of YA thriller horror books. Moving on to one that I know a lot of people have loved a lot more than I have loved, and it's not that I didn't love it, it's that it didn't give me enough to make it a 5-star read, and that is Mexican Gothic by Silvia Moreno Garcia. I read this on my Kindle, and this is a book that from the beginning it reminded me for a lot of different reasons to Dracula by Bram Stoker. And to be fair, maybe if I would reread this again in physical form, maybe my experience will change, but I'm not sure. The thing with this book is it is a Gothic tale that is very slow, so you really have to wait for it to get to the point where you are extremely invested, which is really towards the end. However, the book, even though it was slow for like 2/3 of the book, it was not boring. It was still interesting and intriguing me. I loved the way that it was written, and the author did such an amazing job with creating this atmosphere, this feeling of uncertainty, this feeling of this woman trapped there in this house with a weird family. The story follows Noemi. Her father sends her to see what's going on with her cousin Catalina after they receive a letter in which she asks for help. Catalina has recently married to a man that they don't even really know apart from the wedding day. They didn't really get to know him, so they fear that something might be really wrong. So Noemi goes and tries to find out what's happening with Catalina, how she's feeling, and she gets to this house that is called the High Palace. And if you read this part from the book, you completely get, you know, Jonathan Harker getting into Dracula's place, like 100%. So when Noemi gets there and gets to talk to Catalina, she starts to question if her cousin is actually sane, what's going on in this house, and really slowly there's a lot of things about the past and the inhabitants of this house and the family background that starts to reveal to Noemi, and she starts to put the pieces of the puzzle together. So this is going to be perfect if you love Gothic literature in general, if you love slow-paced books that take their time to build up a nice story, a nice setting, really atmospheric. And to be honest, I'm happy that I read it. It was not my absolute favorite book, but I do feel like this book deserves all the praise that it gets. Just because it was not a 5 coffee mug for me doesn't mean it's not going to be one for you. And now let's address the elephant in the room. I read in the month of March House of Leaves. Alright, so this book, I gave it 4 coffee mugs, and I think maybe if I would reread it, I would even go higher with my rating. This is a book that, as I've mentioned before, has divided a little bit the book community. A lot of people hate it, a lot of people love it, and also a lot of people DNF it. So this story though, the story itself, it's not extremely intricate and complicated. We just have a house. Something's wrong with the house. The house is bigger on the inside than it is on the outside. My favorite part of the story was the main story without the footnotes, the story that involves a family of a filmmaker that decides to move into a new house, and he decides to film the experience of him moving with his new family to this new place, when he realizes that in one of the rooms there seems to be this void into the nothingness, and when you get in there you'll track of time and space, and it seems like an endless void. And he decides that he wants to form a party to investigate this place, this kind of void, and see what they can find there. And he calls a couple of friends to start an expedition. Then through the footnotes we discover another story from people that have come across the story of this family, and it is a book that, you know, I don't want to tell you too much or confuse you too much. So all I'm gonna tell you is that the story is extremely engaging. If you don't mind the unique writing, going through footnotes that have their own footnotes and a lot of different, you know, formatting in the book, if you get through the first 100 pages, you're gonna start binging this book. I had a weird relationship with the book because I felt like it was a chore for me to pick it up because of, you know, footnotes that have footnotes. But on the other hand, I just could not stop reading. like I had to keep reading. And it's not like I forced myself to read it in a couple of days like I wanted to. Like if I thought about picking up other books, I was like, no, I need to finish this, I need to know what's gonna happen. And I think if I would reread this, like I said, I would even give it a higher rating. I think it's a book that you probably need to read a couple of times to really fully comprehend everything that's going on in it. But I absolutely loved it. I have to say, I'm one of those weirdos that actually really enjoyed the book. So let's put it out there. But I understand why this book is not for everybody. I just think it's just so unique and intense, and it's still haunting me. Like the story is still haunting me. I'm still thinking about it. I'm still thinking of rereading it. And also, can we please make a movie of this? That would be perfect. Thank you. And even though it has some horror tropes, you know, family moving to a new place, all of these things, it was just like reading a true crime story. I just felt like everything I was being told is something that had happened, like for real. And the feeling that you get that these actually happen 100%, it's just, I loved it, okay? And then, in preparation for Netflix new release in April, I read the Grisha Trilogy, all 3 books. You see, I had forgotten when I planned my March TBR that I had to read these books before the Netflix show, so I had to add them last minute. Luckily for me, they're kind of easy to go through because they are fast-paced and fairly entertaining for being a fantasy. It's also YA. I was a little bit scared because popular opinion here, but I hated Ninth House, and it is by the same author, so I was a little bit scared, but it is a completely different thing. And actually I found myself enjoying them and understanding why a lot of people enjoy these books. Now, since most of you know what these books are about, I don't want to go into too much detail here because we have other more interesting things to talk about. So let me quickly let you know my thoughts on the books. The first book on the trilogy, Shadow and Bone, is the one that got the highest rating for me. So this is the one that I enjoyed the most from the 3 of them. And it follows the story of the 2 orphans, Mal and Alina, that were taken by a duke, and he took care of them when they were kids. So Mal now has grown up to be a tracker, and Alina is a map maker. So we follow their story, and we follow Alina as she is being taken by somebody called the Darkling, and she's being told that she has a very special power and that they're gonna help her to figure out how to use her power. And she finds herself in a complete different world of the Grisha, and she goes to a palace. And to be honest, part of what I really enjoyed this story was the world building, the magic system. I really enjoyed to learn about it, and I love that nearly all of our characters are kind of in the gray area. It's not like you got introduced to a character and you immediately knew that they were good or evil. Like you kind of didn't know where to place them yet, and I love to see them growing through the books. The second book is Siege and Storm, and we still follow the same characters, but we are introduced in this book to my favorite character from the trilogy, and that is Nikolai. I loved his manners of speaking, and even though this one was not as strong as the first one for me, I did really love the ending. I thought the ending was pretty good. I just was not on board with Alina most of the time. I didn't understand her decisions. She was a little bit frustrating to me as a character in this second book, but nevertheless, you know, this trilogy is a really fast-paced fantasy that if you're looking for something that it is YA, that is bingeable, I still think it's a good trilogy. And progressively, the book that I enjoyed the least was the last one, Ruin in Rising. So even though I did see some character development that I really enjoyed in this book, and even though I still love the universe, the world building, the Fold, and everything that we get to learn about the Grisha and their background and all of that, there's some things that happened in this book that I cannot talk about because it would be spoilers, but some decisions were made that is something that I hate when people do. It doesn't matter if it's in a movie, a TV show, or a book, where things happen and then some chapters later they are reversed. I hope that's not considered a spoiler for you guys, but I just hate when they do that, and they did that in this book. So yeah, this was my least favorite one. I thought the ending was alright. It was not my absolute favorite ending, but I do think it made sense for the characters. So now I'm really excited to be able to check out the show. The next one is a book that surprised me in a positive way. I was not expecting to enjoy this book so much, but that is The House on Coal Hill by Peter James. So this is such a good haunted house story, and I struggle to find really good haunted house stories because most of the time they are too cliche for me. This story, it started with a trope, which is a family moves into a new house and something weird starts to happen. However, there is a little prologue before that beginning that was everything to me. I'm not going to tell you what it is so that you discover it yourself if you pick up the book. But despite this being your typical haunted house story, it started taking some twists and turns that I absolutely adored. This book is another one that is slow paced. However, it is so creepy and atmospheric, and it had so many unsettling moments. I was here for all of it. Absolutely loved it. We have this family that they used to live in the city, but they want to change, so they decide to buy this house on the countryside and just repair it a little bit. But when they move to the house, they realize there is a lot more things to repair than what they had thought at the beginning, and they are struggling financially. On top of that, there seems to be something else living with them in this house, and yeah, even the daughter starts to notice things are weird in this house. So if you're looking for a nice, really atmospheric and good haunted house story, I would recommend you to pick this one up. Now, like I said, this is also slow pace, but this was so good. There is a second book, it's a follow-up to this one, so I'm definitely gonna have to grab that one as well. I finally finished Slay by Nicole Given Kurtz, and this is Stories of the Vampire Noir. And I started this book some time ago, and I still had 60% to finish on my Kindle, and I decided to read a short story nearly every day to get through the book because I was loving it so much and I wanted to finish it. This is definitely an amazing book about vampires. It has a lot of cultural representation, and it brings such a fresh concept of vampires. There is stories for everybody here. We have some that take place in the past, but we also have some modern takes on the vampire genre and the vampire kind of creature. And I just recommend you guys, if you love vampires, you really have to check this one out. And normally in anthologies like this, like, you know, short horror story compilations, there's always stories that I give maybe like 4 or 5, but then I also have like 2s and 3s. And I felt like in this book, nearly all of them were a 4 or up. So this is definitely one of the best anthologies that I have read. And they are all based on vampires. So it is perfect if you love the genre. Then I read a brand new release, and that is Bridge of Souls by Victoria Schwab. And this is book 3 on the Cassidy Blake series. Now, Victoria Schwab has said that for now she's going to put the story to rest, but she has mentioned that in the future we might see more books coming to the story. So I'm really hoping that she's gonna give us more books in the future. I understand she wants to focus on other things now, but the third book was a really good one. I really enjoyed it. If you don't know what the series is about, it's a series about Cassidy, and she travels with her parents. They are paranormal investigators. They kind of make a TV show showing people haunted places or places that apparently are haunted. And what they don't know is that their daughter is able to cross the veil between the living and the dead and able to talk to ghosts, which is what makes it fun, you know. In this third installment, we are taken to New Orleans, and there she realizes that New Orleans is a place full of ghosts, full of a lot of stories that she has to discover. In this book, what I love so much is that we see Cassidy and how important for her is friendship, and I loved to see her, you know, fighting for her friends. I absolutely love that in this trilogy there is no love, there is no romance with other boys or girls. It's just friendship. And sometimes that's just what we need, you know? There's not always the need for a romance. And I think it's also why I really enjoy this series, that it's more about friendship and family and always sticking out for each other. And now let's talk about a book that I have been dying to read since 2020 and I finally got to it, and that is Home Before Dark by Riley Sager. This is an autobiography for me, and I have to say I love this book. However, my favorite is still Lock Every Door. This is such an interesting mystery thriller that takes place in an apparently haunted house. However, as all of his thrillers, it is more based on the thriller and the mystery than horror. In this story, we follow a girl named Maggie. So 25 years ago, she lived in this house with her family, and they left one night on the 15th of July without any explanation. They moved out and they never returned. Then his father wrote a book about the experience of the family in this house and that it was supposedly haunted. So now in the present time and 25 years later, Maggie inherits this house, and she always thought that the book her father wrote was completely a lie, and she decides to go back to the house and kind of fix it up to resell it because that's part of her business. And when she gets to the house, she starts really questioning if what her dad wrote was really a lie, or was it maybe true and she just doesn't remember because she was only 5 when she was living in this house. Now the story, as you can expect from Riley Sager, gets to a point where you're just getting twists and turns and you don't know where to grab yourself in the furniture in your house. You're just not ready for all of the twists and turns that are coming your way. It is another slow-paced book. I think that's a theme in this wrap-up for this month. It's another slow-paced book. However, it was really rewarding for me. I just was loving the reading experience because we are following the story of Maggie in the present time, and at the same time we are also reading the chapters from the book that her father wrote, and I love how these two stories are getting intertwined. I just was here for it because you could see, you know, how we were getting to the same parts of the story with both characters 25 years apart, and I love to see that done in books. So I absolutely love this book. What can I say? It is atmospheric, and it does have a couple of moments that could be considered a little bit unsettling. However, it is not a horror book. It is a thriller with some horror supernatural elements to it, and I think if you've enjoyed other books by Riley Sager, you might enjoy it as well. And this month there are 2 books that actually made it to 5 coffee mugs. The first one, it is not by a genre you would expect me to read because it's a contemporary book, and that is The Last Time We Say Goodbye by Cynthia Hand. I talked about this book on my video about books that portray grief, and it's something that I love to read about. This story was just perfect for me. I absolutely loved it. It just checked all the boxes that I like to see when I'm reading books about grief. We follow Lex. Her brother has committed suicide and she's having a hard time adjusting to the new reality. She's somebody that loves science, so she loves to see things from a scientific point of view and rationalize things. And she hates that now she gets the feeling people only see her as the girl whose brother committed suicide. And she goes to a therapist and he tells her, why don't you write a diary, just as if you were talking to somebody, telling the story, like go through memories with your brother. And she starts writing about the past and the good moments, the bad moments. So you're gonna see her struggling in the present, as well as you're gonna see flashbacks to her past and the times when she was with her brother. This was heartbreaking, but also it's one of those books that it also has a lot of positive things. And if you love books about grief, I definitely think you should check it out. And the winner for the month of March is Later by Stephen King. Was somebody surprised? No? Nobody? No in the back row? No? Okay. The story of an unconventional kid that has a special talent. He can see and talk to ghosts. So he has been keeping this a secret until one day his mother realizes of what he can do, and she tells him he has to keep that secret. Nobody can know what he can do. Jamie's mother, Tia, is a literary agent that is struggling financially after a couple of bad decisions. Now, my favorite part about the book is that this is a supernatural thriller that is actually a coming-of-age story. And this is something that Stephen King has kind of done before, but it was just such a good story. My favorite thing also being that the book is being told from Jamie's point of view, so it even is fun at times. It has its funny moments, and he is explaining to you how it works, how he's able to see ghosts, what he can see, what tells them, oh, this is a ghost, and it's just so pure and at the same time a little bit frightening. With morally great characters, the book story is going to get darker and darker by the page, and also you're going to see, if you are a Stephen King fan or if you have read many of his books, you're going to see connection to other of his books. There are words that he's gonna use that you're gonna know what they're for, and that just pleased me so much as a reader. The ending might not be for everybody, but let me tell you, I did not see that coming. That just slapped me in the face, that ending. I do have a spoiler-free reading vlog where I go a little bit more into detail on things without spoilers, so if you want to check that one out. And another thing that I would like to mention is that the way he just masterfully used the word later through the book, and the meaning of the word later, how everything is explained, it was just, for me, I just love this book so much. I mean, when you see it like this, plus the 2 books that I read on my Kindle, that's a lot in a month. So no wonder that I was a little bit slightly burnt out after that. But I'm excited about, you know, keep reading on April, the things that I have put on my TBR pile, because there are many new releases that I am checking out in the month of April. So I'm excited to let you know about those in case that you want to see if there's something for you or not, or if they're worth your time or not. Hope you enjoyed the video. I think this one turned into a long one, so sorry, but let me know down below what you thought about the books that I have read, and what is the best book you've read in the month of March. Let's talk about it in the comments. Thanks so much for watching, you guys. Please remember to give the video a big thumbs up before you leave, and I hope to see you all in the next coffee time. Bye.